What's a now obsolete technology you miss? Story 1: Owning media. Streaming is very convenient and at one point affordable, but now it's just expensive, ad-riddled, and you just suddenly lose access to stuff randomly. Owned media not only don't randomly disappear, despite some loss of convenience, they're also much higher quality because there's no need to whittle all that extra data away to make it light enough to stream. With streaming having gone on this long, people who have regularly subscribed to all the streaming services they need are very likely to have spent the same amount of money that could cover the purchase of, at the very least, all their repeat favorite media in the form of digital downloads or optical media. And buttons. I miss buttons in a lot of things. And for some reason, designers still put buttons on crap where there should be touch controls, like smart TV remotes. Story 2: VHS. Purely because my kids will never get to know the excitement of going to rental stores like Blockbuster, the smell of the carpet, the popcorn, knowing your Friday night was going to be pigging out with a movie you picked from the store. Great times. Story 3: Downloading music on LimeWire and burning CDs was fun. I still have one of those spindles with a shit ton of old burned CDs on it. I don't even know what's on the CDs these days, but I bet it would be a big nostalgia trip if I took them out and listened to them. Story 4: Cars without touchscreens. Physical buttons for the radio and AC controls. An old-school PRNDL gearshift or a manual transmission. Cars that weighed less than 2 tons and didn't have enormous blind spots. Cars that came in actual colors instead of grayscales. Story 5: One obsolete technology I miss dearly is the good old cassette tape. There was something magical about making mixtapes for friends or recording songs off the radio, complete with the inevitable hiss and crackle. Plus, there was a certain artistry involved in carefully rewinding or fast-forwarding to find your favorite track. It's like a lost art in today's digital age. Story 6: CD/DVD. Hate losing a show because the streamer took it off. Games on DVD. Weirdly, landlines. Office had an issue and lost internet. Also, we had no phones to call customers. Grew up in Florida. Hurricane hit. Just power but could call family. Story 7: Local car starters. Every manufacturer is turning remote start into a cloud service. It sucks. I miss the days of just pointing my key fob out the window and warming up my car. Now I have to pay a subscription to have the ability to use an app on my phone to talk to a cloud that talks to my car and tells it to start. It can take anywhere from 2-4 minutes. And I have to pay a monthly fee. Needless to say, I did not continue the subscription after the trial period expired. Story 8: CDs and DVDs. It was magical going to the video rental shop and having shelves upon shelves of films, rented DVD players, or the discount CD bins and new releases stands at general retailers, and the console and PC games on physical discs, and of course the massive CD cases people had at home, and especially in their car. Story 9: Simple HTML websites. There was a time when you could write a program that would extract information from a website, but it's all but impossible nowadays. The general trend to make everything super clever for humans, and thereby make it impossibly difficult for programs, has led to keyboard slaves. You cannot program repetitive tasks, you just have to keep repeating them manually. Story 10: Life before the internet and every scrap of my data being harvested. Whether it's conversation my phone hears, my phone tracking where I go, the music I listen to or shows I watch, modern cars spying on you, every new appliance, AM/TV wanting internet connection, etc. Also, the loss of physical media, texts, and photos. There's no guarantee your family photos you upload to Facebook, Drive, or store in your phone memory card will still be here in 10 years. At least printed photos have to be physically destroyed to be lost. I used to think the internet was the greatest invention of all time. Now I think it's the worst. It's just a data farm used and abused by core and government. And the real problem is, even if you can leave it behind and accept the disadvantage you would be at, it's getting to the point where that's near impossible. Companies want you to use the internet for fucking everything, even restaurant menus and applications. I'm not even close to a boomer. I have witnessed the internet go from a wonderful and fun Wild West-like frontier to a corporate-owned espionage device. Story 11: Answering machines. More specifically, the world in which we needed them. It used to be that if you couldn't get a hold of someone, it was fine. They would call you back at some point in a number of days. Now, not reaching someone for an hour is a problem. Our phones tell other people when we've read messages but not responded. I think the plausible deniability we had was healthier for relationships. Constant contact can get so overbearing these days. Story 12: Zip drives. Going from approximately 1 4 MB floppy disks to 100 MB zip drives was a quality of life improvement on par with going from dial-up to cable in my view. I don't so much miss the technology itself, just the feeling it gave me when I got my first one, and put all data from the stack of floppy disk onto my one zip drive, and still had more space than I knew what to do with it. It was freeing. We got them when the technology was on the way out, and CDs were ascending, but it was still prohibitively expensive to get an RW drive at our home or at our school, so zip drives were king, and to me it felt like the future. Story 13. Would actual paper tickets to sporting events count? It was often a creative little sliver of paper that you could keep for the memories. Having to use my phone as a ticket kind of sucks, especially when I have to have a full family's worth of tickets on my phone. I do understand why they did it, though. Story 14. Cars that aren't packed full of computers, remote-controlled, and motorized doodads that break and cost tons of money to repair. Even if you find parts, you might not be able to repair it yourself, and you might misdiagnose the problem and replace the wrong part. I miss my '89 Toyota Camry. Story 15. Landlines. Cell phones suck for actual voice communications. Hate stepping on people talking and only one side can talk at a time and then both sides get cut out and neither can hear. Thank cell phones for that. With landlines, both people can talk and, magic of magics, both could also hear the other when that happened. You know, a real two-way conversation. Story 16. Wall clocks. A cell phone is a fine way to know what time it is, but it is more convenient at times to have the time displayed clearly in a public clock. This weekend, for the first time, I was in a school basketball gym and saw no clock. These institutional situations always used to have wall clocks. Story 17. Actual click buttons on cars to control AC or radio, for example. Some still have them, but many brands are ditching them for touch-sensitive buttons and it's just plain stupid. How is a touchscreen button safer and better than an actual button that I don't even have to look at to know if I clicked it or not? Not to mention clicky buttons are a lot more satisfying to press. Story 18. I like small appliances with knobs and dials instead of keypads and LED displays. For example, toaster ovens. These are getting more difficult to find. Also, last time I bought a laptop, I had a difficult time finding one with a DVD drive. There are a few reasons I want a DVD drive. I think laptops with DVD drives will at some point be impossible to find because big tech wants all of us to live in the cloud. Story 19. MSN Messenger, ICQ, or other chat rooms. In particular, I miss when we used to go to a computer, connect to the internet, and go online and talk to friends only when they're online as well. I liked the boundaries of not being able to be contacted 24/7 with a device that's always with you like it is today. Story 20. I miss playing traditional Tetris on a traditional Game Boy. Although it's been a lot of years since I played, I want to pick it up again. I liked the thumb buttons, and I don't want to do it on my phone. Plus, now traditional Game Boys are retro and expensive when you can find one. Story 21. Basic electronic treadmill with the old alarm clock style digits and controller buttons. We had one for 35 years, no problem until it finally died. Enter Nordic Track and their fuck-off begging for Wi-Fi pause system that died in less than 2 years with minimal, very minimal use. Customer service rep was nice and all, but their policy and price to replace the glorified tablet that simply refused to turn on one day caused me to disassemble the entire hunk of junk down to nuts and bolts and unceremoniously kick it to the curb. Story 22. Mechanical ignition and analog controls in cars. Phones with slide-out QWERTY keyboards. Headphone jacks. TVs before pausing a video for 10 seconds took you back to the home screen to try and push more advertisements for your convenience. A lot of guilty parties here, but fuck Sony the most on this one. Story 23. I miss going to Blockbuster Video on Friday after school and browsing for a couple of movies to watch over the weekend. It made an event out of scheduling and watching a movie, not just something to fill the evening between supper and bedtime. Everyone in the house sat down together to watch the movie. Story 24. I am going to miss analog broadcasts of any type simply because there's something so satisfying about being able to build a radio or even a TV from basic components as one could ages ago. For many people, building a crystal radio was their first electronic project, something that can be put together in a couple hours and lets you listen to AM radio. While AM is not completely dead, it may as well be. There are no stations in my hometown except for one where a rabid preacher talks about all the people God hates and begs people for money. A couple weeks ago, they finally shut down analog television in my country, and I got immediately called by an old friend asking if I could somehow revive the 80s CRT set I had been maintaining for several years now for them. Now I live far away, so it would have been cumbersome for me to travel and install a converter, especially since the set does not have a composite in. They got themselves a bunch of flat screens. Makes me sad to think about all the vintage TVs that must have been still kicking, but now got tossed into the trash and smashed open by the copper scrappers. Story 25. A keyboard with real buttons in my phone. I have gotten used to these digital ones, but they make so many mistakes. I used to be able to type and know I got it right. Now I have to reread and fix everything when my phone thinks I touched a different button. I just miss the feel and the confidence. Story 26. They're not completely obsolete, but I miss landlines. I could have one, but I've gotten used to having a cell phone when I leave the house. Not even sure why, aside from never having to worry about losing the phone or dropping it. Or missing as many calls because you left it on vibrate or something. Really, it would be for my old mom, who has trouble answering her cell phone. She's convinced it drops calls, but she's just putting her thumb on the off button usually. She usually doesn't hear them either, so our house would benefit. We'd even be able to get one of those phones that blink a light when the phone is ringing. Also, those doctor's office phones that sit on the desk, tilted upward, those are awesome. Plus, misdials would be less of a problem, so, wow, yeah. Landlines. Story 27. Dedicated devices for things. Obviously, we all love how convenient it is for our phones to do everything, but I miss things like dedicated portable video players like the Arcos, when digital cameras were hot, and MP3 players, specifically my Zune HD I sold that I still miss to this day, or having to convert movies to MP4S to play on my PSP instead of watching them on my laptop or TV, etc., etc. It was just cool to have so much neat technology at the time. There were so many cool things you could buy. Story 28. Traditional telephones using twisted pair copper wire. The latency was basically zero, so conversations were easier. As soon as cell phones and packet-switched networks took over telephony, every exchange has an unavoidable delay between responses and it drives me up the fucking wall. Story 29. I think flip phones were the peak of the cell phone era. It gave us just enough connection. We could be reached at all times, but it wasn't an expectation for you to be available at all times. Most adults didn't text much because it was a hassle before keyboards. Facebook was great because before smartphones, it was actually about enhancing your real life. I hate to sound like a grumpy old man, but I think smartphones have been a net negative for society. Story 30. My iPod. I loved importing my music, legit or ill-gotten, and organizing the library. I spent hours adding the album art or labeling everything fully if it was missing on the file. Having more or less every song out there on my phone and Spotify is amazing, but there was something cool about having this small device that had my music collection on it. Story 31. I miss going to the video store to rent a movie and a player. It was more of a ritual in a way. Would go with my family or group of friends and take long time to discuss and choose a movie. We would buy snacks and then walk home and be excited about the movie. After we would often talk about it. Sometimes if the movie was really good, I would rewatch it the next day before returning it. Now it's hard for me to get excited about it. I watch movies and series while falling asleep, and almost always alone. And I rarely even finish them and I don't care. Too many choices and too easy. I know I'm getting old. Story 32. I wish somebody still made basic point and shoot digital cameras. I find it awkward to hold my phone just right. I hate the on-screen controls, and it doesn't work nearly as well. The pics are seldom as good as my old Panasonic. I have a digital SLR, but it's too bulky to carry around for everyday use. I'm not nostalgic about film, though. Story 33. Audio tapes. Not the tech or the sound, but the culture of them. A playlist is not the same as a mixtape. It didn't take the same effort to make. So it's not as important when you give one to someone. When you got a tape, you'd play it over and over until you knew all those songs backwards. Story 34. True landline telephones with good ergonomic handsets that cup the ear. Full duplex, good modulation. Younger folks who grew up with DSL, VoIP, or mobile only will never know how badly the quality has declined in everyday voice communications. I suspect one reason why so many people now prefer texting is because of the mediocre quality of voice comms now. It makes for awkward conversations. Story 35. Headphone jacks in phones, only because having a separate MP3 player doesn't make sense. I liked the wired headphones. They were harder to lose, didn't require batteries, and you could have just about any brand of headphones and it can work. Now, I have to make sure I charge them. I grab the right ones, and I have to make sure I don't lose them. I once lost a pair for 6 months, just gave up on ever finding them. Then I moved, and the movers found them in a random spot. Story 36. Video games that were as is when you bought them. They put more effort into making it run right and be a complete experience. Now, you buy the disc, and the game needs another 80 GB download just to work, only for you to be pestered with constant reminders that they have a download pack to make you win easier or to give you better looking gear. I don't need to be reminded immediately when I start playing a new $70 game that I should spend another $20 to get the latest content. Story 37 buttons. I despise touchscreens, especially in cars. My Mazda 3 has buttons right below the gearbox, next to the place your arm naturally rests anyway. I can basically control my head unit while barely moving my hand and without even looking at the screen. It's so much more convenient, not to mention safer than having to tap on the exact right spot on the screen while your arm is shaking around from the movement of the car. Story 3890s gaming. Older games were all about the journey of exploration, findings out how to progress, finding clues, honing skills. Games today are boring. But you have to push the button at the right time. Shut up. I remember a time where 99.9% of players didn't even expect there to be a button or a way past a given screen. You needed to actually explore. The nearest I've seen is akin to the Easter egg hunts some devs do, where clues are scattered all over the place in promos, trailers, announcements, clues in audio recordings in the source code of the game, and hidden clues in website script. That's awesome. But the base game is still boring. As the clues, the hunt is actually the challenging part. We as people have ruined games, collectively. We've become numb to what games can and used to be. WASD, move around in 3D environment, do what you're told to, and you better love it, has come to stay, which deeply saddens me. Story 39. I miss removable storage media. Not entirely obsolete, but try finding a modern desktop or laptop that has a built-in optical drive. You need to plug in an external one. I miss sticking stuff on a disk to give to a friend, and that disk being so cheap that you didn't mind them keeping it. These days, you upload it and send a link, or stick it on a thumb drive. But a thumb drive costs a not pennies amount of money. That means that I want my USB back. John. Story 40. Not a technology, but a staple of the past that is virtually impossible to find now. Sized, non-adjustable waist, children's jeans. Now they cut all the sizes too. 3 inches wider in the waist, and run buttonhole elastic through the inside of the waistband. My not especially skinny kids always looked like they were drowning in their jeans, even the slim sizes, because I'd have to cinch the waist so much just so they would stay up. I genuinely forgot about this peeve, but now that my tot is graduating toddler sizing, which is also too wide, I'm right back in the thick of it. Sigh.